3 a.m. with the fear of facing everybody here today and speaking to you. So if I shake, let it go. Um, he's very quiet. He stands for moral support. And you're going to find out that we were asked to kind of tell you a little bit about ourselves and then share what's on our heart. Well, you will find when I talk to you, we're one and the same. And a lot of that's just because of how long we've been together. So I'm Tammy. He's Terrell. You may know us as the quiet but sweet old couple who come to church, but I'm here to tell you the truth about us, okay? No, he's not old. We're a couple that we don't even come from different backgrounds. We come from completely different universes. And that is truthful. He comes from a solid background. He had the normal family that has little problems, you know. Families don't get along, they have their little tiffs, but they're normal. Life is great, right? I come from this place that when I was in my mid-20s, a prophet came to our church and struggled with giving me a prophecy, just kept looking at me. And I don't like it when people look at me because you make me nervous. When you look at me, I really start to wig out. And he finally looked at me and he said, I don't understand it. I keep getting this prophecy for you, but I'm going to give it to you because I don't understand it. You are too young, but when I look at you, I see 7 lifetimes of hell. He didn't know that my 7 lifetimes of hell had come by the time I was 13. That's a very young age to go through. When you can think of nightmares and you think of what lives are made out of, and I'm not talking like just abuse. I'm not talking about just this. I'm talking about almost everything you can think of. I had dealt with it by the time I was 13. No child should ever have to do that. By the time I'm 14, I met this one. He's 2 years older than me. Comes from that same normal background. And he gets this little package of dynamite that is completely messed up that just blows up all over him. He's not sure how to handle it, but we loved each other, right? The very first time he walked into a pool hall that I used to hang out at, my aunt was there, Brownie was there, I was there, and he walked in. Never spoke to me, never looked at me, and I didn't look at him. That wasn't happening. But when I left, I told my aunt, this is the man I'm going to marry. Now, if you know anything about me back then, men were dogs. I did not trust a man. They would cheat, they would beat, they would lie, they would whatever, and no man was any good. And I honestly felt that way. I used to have a saying, if it wasn't for the fact that Jesus Christ was a man, I would never believe there was any good in a man. And that was literally how I felt. Women, I'm sorry, they were worse than men. They would stab you in the back and laugh while you bled. They would walk all over you and do whatever. So I trusted no one. Absolutely no one. And then he walks in, I don't even know him, and I'm like, hey, here's the man I'm going to marry. Now, where's a goofball idea like that come from, right? Because any other man never stood a chance, right? When you mix that together, it's fine. Except, we got married, I was 18, he had just turned 21. Not only did we get married at a very young age, we threw kids into the mix. I had my first kid a month after I turned 19, my second kid when I was 20 and a half, and my third kid by the time I was 23. Then I waited 8 years, did it right, and had 2 more. So we've raised kids for 33 years. There's been a lot of fights, a lot of issues to deal with and to overcome, and we didn't know how to do it. The only thing we had going for us was this church. I came to this church when I was 15. And he had a Baptist background. We would go because his mom would be like, please come to church with me, please, please, please. So we'd hop here, we'd hop there, we'd hop here, we'd hop there. And I'm sorry, this church was crazy. When I first came here, this place was nuts. And I remember being so freaked out and scared the very first time I came. I jumped up in my seat, and my mom grabbed me and said, where are you going? And I dropped a really bad word and said, I'm getting out of here. Y'all are nuts. She begged me to stay. Best decision I've ever made in my life. Hands down, best decision I've ever made in my life. I've got my script and I'm trying to stay on it. As we have grown, you have the normal problems. You have the money issues, you have the kids issues, you have, I'm working 2 and 3 jobs, so I'm tired and we're fighting, but they're the normal issues, right? There was a marriage seminar, getaway, whatever you want to call it, and I believe Kevin and Sherry put it on many, many, many years ago, that was called Divorce is Not an Option. We went to it. Our marriage was pretty good, but we went to it, right? Didn't know what a role it would play later in our lives. Fast forward, like I said, we have all the kids. I've got this chip on my shoulder. I could have compassion for other people, especially if you were a child, an elderly, or an underdog. You were in my heart. If you were the normal person, you couldn't be trusted anyway. So while I might empathize with what was going on in your life and feel bad about it, that's life. Deal with it, grow up, buttercup, and move on. I didn't give grace to him. I sure never gave grace to myself. I didn't even understand what that was. It had never been shown to me. When I grew up, I had never heard the word love in my house. Not one single time. It was never said about I love this food, I love you. It just didn't exist. We were 5 people that lived in one house, and we just existed together. So this chip wouldn't even fit in this church when I met him. He had to deal with all that, and we did very, very well. We held it together for many, many years, had our fights, but we got over it. Then I went to law school, and boy, I'll tell you what, I remember sitting there that first day, and they said, look to the left of you, look to the right of you. One of the 3 of you will not be here in a matter of a month, and 2 of the 3 of you are likely to be divorced by the time you get out of law school. I'd been married 21 years by the time I went to law school. That wasn't going to happen to me, right? Yeah, let me tell you. Tammy can be very difficult to deal with. Tammy has recognized that. He's not perfect, though, so I will not take all the blame in what we've gone through. However, when I went to law school, as I said, I couldn't give grace to him. I gave some, but I expected him to be a certain way. And things got really, really bad in our marriage. And it was over stupid stuff, right? It was over the most mundane ding-dong stuff you could ever deal with. And it was like, I wasn't available. I get that. I literally would shower, and we had rigged this thing outside of the shower. I could stick a law book right there. And I'd shower, washing, reading the law book. We went to dinner one time in the 3 years I was in law school, and I had law books sitting on our table at the restaurant. His sister went with us, so he had someone to talk to. Of course, when I'm not there, you don't have someone to talk to. You start talking to your sister. But to me, that's betrayal. When you're not talking to me, in 21 years, I had let my fences down a little bit, but not much. I did not trust him completely. I loved him, but I didn't trust him. He would, and I'm not ratting him out, him and I have discussed this, he would lie to me about talking to his sister. Something so stupid. I know why he did it, and he was right. The minute he told me that he'd talked to her and I didn't know about it, there's a fight, dude. You don't leave me out of things. I'm your wife. I'm the one you talk to, and this is just the attitude that I have. When you don't, you show me I can't trust you anymore. All my defenses went right back up, and our marriage was in deep trouble because now our marriage and our fights were not about money. They weren't about raising the kids. They weren't about I'm stressed out. They were about you lied to me, and I don't care how minute that was. So we called our pastors in. You would think that when I sit there and tell you, dude, he's lying to me. This is not a me thing. This is a him thing, right? Pastor Larry, God love that man, told Terrell, he said, Terrell, you're about to lose the best thing that ever happened to you. And I was like, yes, get him, get him. Pastor's son looked at me and said, this is your fault. I said, excuse me? She said, you have put that man on a pedestal that he can't live up to. This is 100% on you. Oh, I was angry. My older sister looked at me and said, what's the matter, Tammy? Did you find another man in law school? You know what my answer was? Tina, if I was lucky enough to get rid of the one I had, I wouldn't be stupid enough to take on another one. And that was how I honestly felt. And it reached the point I asked him for a divorce. Didn't really want a divorce. I wanted to stop hurting. I wanted him to understand how serious things were. Because when I asked him for a divorce, do you know what he told me? We don't have any issues. We don't need a divorce. I was like, are you serious? I said, the very fact that I'm asking you for a divorce should tell you we have some major issues. I'm so glad the man is lovingly dense. I really am glad that he is, because I would hear things thrown back at me. Divorce is not an option. We learned that years ago, Tammy. I'm like, oh, seriously. So I walked into our bedroom, and I stood at the foot of our bed, and I prayed. I was like, God, I can't stand this man right now. You need to do something. You need to change him. God, are you listening to me? Because I can't take anymore. God, where are you? Right? You know what I heard? What about you? I was like, no, wait a minute. This ain't about me. This is not about me. And I heard, what about you? I said, God, I don't understand. This is not about me. I'm not lying. I'm not causing the issues. I'm blameless in all this. What do you mean, what about me? Arguing with God gets you nowhere. I mean, let me tell you, gets you nowhere. So God, the kind gentleman he is, looked at me and said, hey, what about you? What about all the psychotic jealousy he's put up with from you? What about all the hold his feet to the fire for every little thing he does? What about you, Tammy, when you have this tendency, if someone looks at you wrong or breathes wrong, you're going off? He's dealt with it. You can't deal with this. You can't accept some of the things from him. Fast forward, I go to EBI here. We have an occults class. One of my classmates, we were reading about all these different cults, and one of them was every female had to sleep with the leader, even though he was married. That's the only way she was made clean. And I was walking into class one night, and one of my classmates says, how can you be so stupid? And I kind of just flippantly said, but for the grace of God. Those 6 words, yes, the I do and I love you too, changed my life. But those 6 words changed my life. Why? Because it made me take a hard look at myself. It made me take a hard look at the world that I so thought was so horrid, and begin to understand, but for the grace of God, that was me or mine. But for the grace of God, that's me being the addict out on the street. That's me stealing from a family member. But for the grace of God, that's me practicing some religion other than Christianity. I was blessed enough, even though my family was dysfunctional, I was blessed enough to be in a household with parents who my dad at a young age took us to church because my uncle was the reverend. And then he got completely away from church. And my mom, maybe I went 6 times the rest of my life from the time I was like 7. But she put that there, right? I cannot tell you when I ever gave my life to God. He's just always been there, right? But I had to start looking at everything in my life. When I was 25, I went out to my dad's, and I told him, I forgive you for everything you ever did to me. I don't want you feeling any shame. I don't want you blah, blah, blah. The man ignored me. Called me a few choice names to my older sister later that night, but ignored me. I did it because I had found out from this church, you have to heal and move on. You have to give it to God so that you can get closer to God. So it was kind of a selfish reason. Boy, when I heard those 6 words, but for the grace of God, I began to understand my dad was chased by the hounds of hell every day of his life. That's why my dad was the way he was. I wouldn't want that. I could have empathy and feel sorry for my father. I could look at the things that other people were going through all of a sudden and thank God that his grace, I never understood that word, and I didn't understand it when it came to myself until a few weeks ago when our wonderful pastor kind of broke it down for the ding-dongs in the audience, and she finally got aha moment, right? Because there was no room in my life when I was a child for weakness. There was no room in my life when I was a child forever messing up. You did not do either one of those things. They were not allowed. You didn't cry when someone spanked you or beat you. You didn't anything because if it was an outsider that had done it, you got it at home because you were crying. It's not something you did. So I've never been able to understand God's grace on my life. I've never been able to accept that when I screw up, he loves me and forgives me. It's just bone deep. I didn't get that till just a few weeks ago. I didn't really understand. But God had been working on me with the but for the grace of God. He had been showing me, but for his grace, that I hadn't even really been necessarily always walking with him or putting my faith into him or putting my trust, because I'm the type of person, one person I trust. One person I know that's not going to mess me over, one person that's going to have my back, and one person that's going to fight to the death, and that's me. I've found it hard to let God take that spot. If you haven't been where I've been, I mean, it's easy sometimes to sit there and say, well, you shouldn't be that way. Well, you know what? I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. And I know I'm an old bird. I should have figured it out long before now, but hey, better late than never, right? I mean, so I encourage you to see, when you see things, like I'm kind of weird when I hear about school shootings or I hear about something that happened to a child. I pray for the child, but typically I pray for the perpetrator first. Why? Because they are fighting that battle against principalities and they're losing. They have just messed up their lives, may not even recognize that they've messed them up. And the whole world has just turned against them. We'd like to think as Christians we don't judge, but how many times when you hear something like that is the first thought, they need to be strung up? That's a judgment. It's not, oh, God, have mercy on their soul. God, find a person to cross their path to bring them out of whatever they're in. And those 6 words have done that. I would like to say we don't fight anymore, but the little girl in me comes out sometimes. The bigger woman in me tries to trounce her down, but it doesn't always work. But I can give grace to my husband now, and I can give grace to myself. So I would encourage you, if you can't remember anything else that I talked about, remember those 6 words, but for the grace of God, because it'll change your life.
That's going to be hard to follow. One thing I really liked that she brought out was it's a process. And it took many, many years for God to change what's inside. And the deeper the trauma, the longer sometimes it takes. And I was going to point that out in our story too. I mean, when we're up here giving our testimony, it's almost like a sitcom or a television show. You get the problem, you get what it takes to solve it, and then you get the end, and it's all nicely all wrapped up in 30 to 60 minutes. And we can give our testimony in, 15 or 20 minutes, but you don't, even if we give you dates, it's hard for you to imagine the years that it took from the start of the problem till God was able to show himself so mighty. So I asked Pastor Jody to play that last song because it just always speaks to me how God takes a problem and brings victory. And I just thought that song emphasized that clearly. But it never ceases to amaze me how the Holy Spirit brings everything together, because Unju's teaching, Tammy and Terrell's testimony, the praise and worship, it just all flows so mightily together. That song spoke of hope, love, life, grace, victory, freedom, that all comes from Jesus first, and then through our lives if we're obedient to what God has for us. And as we copy Jesus, just as he was the exact representation of God, we can also share our stories and show a representation of Jesus to other people. So to start with, I'm also going to reference EBI because that was a major thing in my life. So that started in 2010, the fall. Oh my goodness. But I also, this is about just a short little thing, but I also wanted to say in 6 months' time, I got a promotion. My mother died. I started an EBI. My husband left me after 33 years. My daughter, who lived at home, lost, she was a teenager, but I think everybody knows how dramatic teenage girls can be. She lost the boyfriend that she thought was the love of her life. My second daughter, who had gotten married in high school, literally her husband pulled up in our driveway, threw out a few suitcases, her and her cat and pet snake, into my yard and drove off. And my oldest daughter left her husband. So here we are in this house, 4 broken women. But a few things happened that changed all of that. What happened was just like in that song, God was able to take the ashes of my life and bring victory. He took depression, defeat, and bondage and gave me victory. So I was already in EBI, and I was immersed in reading and studying the Bible. Thank God for that, I say over and over. And also, God used Pastor Sun, of course, all the teaching we'd had all those years, but her books. So when I was on a break, I read her 2 books, Bad Luck Baby and This Too Shall Pass. And, they speak of forgiveness and forgiveness and forgiveness. That year, in 2011, so the next year, we decided, and we may have done this before, but I just remember this. We were going to take the month before the conference. We were going to have early morning prayer. And how many of you guys remember the fasting? This week, we're going to give up meat. This week, we're going to give up sweets. And different things was harder for different people. But every week, we gave up something to remind us to pray for the conference. But every morning at 7 o'clock, a few of us would meet at the church and pray. Well, I started doing that because I didn't have to go into work very early. But the thing that happened to me was, after the conference, I can continue to do it until the next year at that conference, which I think we did it again. But I prayed every single day. And it was so funny, Pastor Larry, people got tired of opening the church for me. So Pastor Larry came one day and was like, Karen, here's a key. Just come in and let yourself in. And I bet you think that year in 2011 was a major breakthrough for me. But I don't remember anything remarkable happening that year for me personally. And I was probably just too broken. But I know seeds were planted. But anyway, I kept praying for a year. And in 2012, at that conference, we're praying, everybody's up front, and I hear so audibly, the man in front of you is going to be your next husband. And I just want to say that in April, when the conference is the month my ex-husband decided to file, actually, for the divorce. And I mean, that voice was so real to me, I actually, turned around. And there was no one there. I was at the back of the line. But then I looked down. I didn't even know who was, in front of me because, here we are at the line waiting our turn to be prayed for. And I looked down, and it's so funny. Tammy McDaniels had been slain in the spirit, and Ron was there on his knees praying for her. You know how we do. We pray for people. And that's the only man that was in front of me. And I'm like, whoa. I'm not looking for a man. I'm not, I'm getting divorced. So there we were. Let me find my place because I don't want to. During that year, I also fasted a lot. And sometimes it was on purpose, but sometimes it was just because I was so broke I didn't have any food. And my kids called me the queen of the empty refrigerator because that was very unusual in our house as they grew up. But God did so much to me, and mainly what he was saying to me was, you have to forgive. And I don't know about you mamas out there, but when my kids got hurt, that took precedence over even my own hurt because these men had hurt them. So I'm dealing, and God is telling me, you got to forgive. You got to forgive. Pastor Son's book, Forgive. Look at the victory you can get. And so I tried my best to forgive and to let all these things go. And while I was at early morning prayer, the love of God was so tangible, so many mornings, you could touch it. And the thing that you can't really get from the testimony is the day-to-day struggles. I mean, I can tell you, you can imagine, but so many days I would walk in from work. I'm struggling with this new job, new responsibility, new hours, and if my kids weren't home, I would just come through the back door, not even turn on a light, go up the stairs, call on my bed, pull the covers over my head and say, thank you, God, you got me through today. And tomorrow will be better because I trust you. I trust you. I trust you. Okay, I think that's it. So at that conference in 2011, when I heard that word from the Lord, I just want to say I never told a soul. So I kept that in my heart and just trusted God that he was going to do what he said he was going to do.
I would imagine a lot of people in here remember some of my testimony. I just figured I'd give some of it for kind of reminder and to bring everything into perspective of how we got together and how God did this, in his mercy, his love. Thank you, God. So some of it may be graphic for some, but this is pretty much the way I see it. In 2005, I was arrested again for drunk driving, and I thought that I was going back to prison because of my temper and my addiction and the alcohol. And I already served a year in prison for it. And at this time, just got in his way. I read a Bible every day for a year. I mean, every day. I mean, I don't even know how many times I read it. But, you hear the word and it didn't just work overnight. Actually, it was 5 years, as it turned out. And I got out of that 9/11. So to move forward, I lived in a motel driving a moped for like 10 years because I couldn't get a license. And the poor decisions that I made, I couldn't get a license in Michigan either because that's pretty much why I left. So here I'm in jail now again, the next time. And this is, you know, it was it. It was over. You know, the charade, my game was done. This was the last time. There was no other way. So just picture this. I'm in jail. I just surrendered. I open a Bible, and it says, Ephesians 5:18, be not drunk with wine, but be filled with the Holy Spirit. And that became self-fulfilling prophecy. And so anyways, I'm in jail there, and they go to bring me in front of the judge, but the judge turned out being the lawyer I used all the years before to get out of trouble. So he couldn't judge me. So they just put that off. I figure a couple days, whatever, somebody have to go to another judge. A couple hours later, he comes to the jail, takes me to court, becomes my lawyer pro bono. And then the judge got me in a drug court. This all kind of just quick kind of summary, but you know, praise God. You know, what a testimony there. Yeah. So I did the drug court thing, and which was I finished a 3-year program in a year and a half. Didn't have to pay, obviously, the 3 years, which was obviously, quite a hindrance. So, and I was on work release, and I got a job at Wells Nursery. Here I'm, I think I would be probably around 50, and I'm driving a 10-speed 50 miles a week from the jail I was staying at, work release, to Wells Nursery. Then I had to go to AA 3 times a week. So this was, and the whole time during this, this process, God is dealing with the word that I read in that time, before. And it was amazing. I tell you what, I've seen the power of God work in my life, like, you just don't forget that. And while I was I went to a Baptist church there. I was going to St. Michael's also because of my Catholicism and my Catholic background. I just thought that's what you're supposed to do, But God, thank God he freed me of that too, I was at a Baptist church. I tell you what, say what you will. They taught me how to evangelize. They taught me how to understand and read the Bible, how to preach on street corners. I was, Karen didn't say some of this, and I'm going to read a testimony, but when I came here, I just met Karen, and at that time, Mary Ann was doing prayer meetings. We're evangelizing in Riley Park every Sunday. I was working. The Baptist church got me going to Springer's nursery. So that was a beginning. God just opening doors. I was called to do a Bible study when I was back then. And I was in that Baptist church, and I went to Charis Bible School. I didn't have a computer, you know. They didn't have no internet at these places I stayed. And so that was a process. I didn't even know how to log on to the school. I paid them, waiting. They called me up a couple of weeks later, said, why haven't you joined? And I said, okay. So they kind of walked me through that process. But as I just go forward on that, I started here in 2010. And I drove that moped 10 miles to get here. And when I was in jail all that other time, you know, I'm living in jail, there was a state police officer who would teach usually on Sundays. I thought this was their church because he had some kind of mission thing. Either way, I drove up here, and Pastor Larry was here. It was just like, you know, this guy with the moped in the parking lot, you know. Either way, that was all God. It changed my life. It changed my life.
I'm just going to say, he always told me God told him to come to this church, but it was easy for him because the Baptist church had asked him to leave when he started laying hands on people, praying for their healing.
So this is the word the Lord gave me when I was with Karen. We're just, like I said, we're just ministry buddies, I've assumed. And this is on, this is June 6th, 2013. And the Lord, and I just gave this to her, you know. So take this all with some grace, because Karen's going to talk after this. I figured I'd get my word in first. All right, here we are, June 6th, in the year of the Lord, 2013. Karen is a good friend to you, my son. My plan requires both of you to be as one and as a team. You will go forth showing others how to be healed by the faith of the Son of God. So do not be afraid, for this is my perfect will for you. Do not resist it, for you must be as one. Do not forget what I have shown you. Believe in me and proceed. You both will walk in my supernatural blessings and be one with me and my word. Do not go to the right or the left. Be right in my sight and stand for my word. Be strong, and others will see you as my disciples. So do not be scared. Continue doing right, and I will redeem you, free from sin by faith. Both for my new order is taking place now. Things will begin to change at Evangel. You too will be made pure in my righteousness. Show no fear, for I am with you. Begin today so I have a place to stand in you, Ron. I want you to show Karen how to speak righteously. Keep her from the things of this world. Be my godly man in her presence always. Show no sign of the world in you. You must be strong in me so I can change you. Be renewed in my power by my spirit. The things I have shown you are nothing compared to what you are about to see. Believe in me and proceed to the place I have already set forth for you both to be blessed. In my presence there is goodness, mercy, and healing, and I want you to deliver it to those I put before you. Know I am God, and humble yourself to receive my fullness forever. My love is upon you. Do as my word directs, and be faithful in all you do, and I will bless you both with my knowledge and goodness in all things. Sorry about the... Okay.
So this happened after prayer meeting one night. He asked if he could talk to me. We stayed after. We're sitting in my car because, you know, he didn't have one. And I'm reading what he just read, and I'm remembering what I got at a conference over a year ago. And I'm like, yes, God's been speaking to him. And so I kind of blurt out, you know, yes, I already knew this. And I'm so glad that you brought me this because God's told me you're going to be my husband. And I thought he was going to go, exactly. You know, God's been speaking the same thing to me. But you know what he said? That's not what this is about. This is about ministry, not a relationship. And I felt this big. And I'm like, great. I did not even hear God. But, you know, that's just a funny little story in all the little things that happen that we don't have time to go into, that the enemy can use to tell you, you don't really hear God. You're not really going to get healed. You're not really going to get your victory. But you know what? God kept speaking to Ron, and eventually he came around. It did not. No, we were engaged by the end of the year. The last day. He proposed to me on New Year's Eve. It was so cute. So, in telling you our story, the thing we're trying to say with our testimony is just like the song we heard. We traded all kinds of things that we didn't want. I could have went with bitterness, depression, unforgiveness, anger. But because we were obedient, because we diligently studied the Word, because we prayed and fasted, we got hope and blessing and victory and freedom. We want to really hone in on the forgiveness. You know, Ron is going to say a few words about AA and everything, but you tie God's hands if you don't forgive. And it isn't even, you know, sometimes we think when God so lovingly speaks to us, it's kind of like a request. You know, he's saying, it's better if you forgive everybody, but that's not how he says it. We're required to let these things go. We are not allowed to hold on to these things. And you tie God's hands when you won't do the things he's asked you to do. But if you do them, the things you get. And it's so funny, like when we were first married, I would teach Sunday school, and I would always say nice things about Ron. And finally, after a long while, Pastor Larry was like, yes, Karen, we know Ron is perfect. But he's perfect for me, and God knew it, and he brought him to this church. Ron was obedient, I was obedient, so we were able to get that blessing. And I just can't emphasize enough what forgiveness. And I'm talking not just my ex-husband, not just those other young men who hurt my daughters. You know, here's one other thing, it's not even in here, but I'd been separated for a few months, and my ex-husband called me up because I'll tell you, you might be the only Jesus people see. And he did not hang around with a bunch of Christians, I'm just going to tell you. And he called me up and he said, you know, my girlfriend that I left you for is really sick. Would you come over and pray for her? And I was like, sure, I will. And I did. And I am sure where my ex-husband is right now. He still didn't live a life of victory, but I know where he is. So.
And I can remember going to his to the hospital bed and preaching the gospel to him. You know, that's just the way God is. That's how God works. We try to put it all on a page or like we know something. That's just kind of crazy to think that. And just forgiveness here, I know with our daughter and that family, and that's kind of what really got this in us deeper. But, you know, the forgiveness that the whole family, it brings families together, it brings each other closer. And, you know, and when you forgive, too, you know, you always, a lot of people go, well, I'm sorry. Well, sorry is not forgiveness. You know, ask me, will you forgive me? That's how you open the door. Because the enemy has taken it, you know. And again, when you say no to the forgiveness, that's what opens that door for demons, hate, bitterness.
Right, and that's what I've skipped over, is forgiveness is never for that other person. They may not even be sorry. They might not ever tell you they're sorry or change. But forgiveness will free you.
So that's pretty much all we have. I know we're kind of running over here. So we're just going to close. And if anybody would like prayer, please come up.
We're going to quickly say a dismissal prayer. But if anybody would like